What if the most dangerous people in your life aren't your declared enemies, but are, in fact, the very people who claim to love you, the ones who can hurt you most deeply, not with a fist, but with a gentle smile, a warm hug, or a helpful piece of advice? Have you ever felt yourself slowly shrinking in a relationship, second-guessing your own thoughts, and losing the sound of your own voice, all while being told it's for your own good? That creeping, confusing feeling, it's not in your head. Today, using the clear-eyed wisdom of the ancient Stoics, we are dragging these patterns into the light. We're exposing 5 subtle but devastating behaviors you must never tolerate, not from a partner, not from a boss, and yes, not even from your own family. This isn't about assigning blame. It's about learning to build an unbreakable shield for your soul. Let's begin. Some of the most insidious demons we face don't hide in the shadows. Some of them sit across from you at the dinner table. Some of them call you love. Some of them call you bro. And they often smile while they are slowly, methodically, stealing your soul. They don't grow horns or breathe fire. Their weapons are far more subtle. They breathe doubt, guilt, and confusion into your life. And worst of all, they often wear the trusted, familiar face of someone you once loved. These entities aren't characters from a fantasy novel. They are very real psychological parasites. Their goal isn't to kill you outright. They simply want to make sure that, over time, you no longer recognize the person staring back at you in the mirror. And the absolute scariest part, you often don't even consciously register that it's happening until it's far too late. But today, we break the spell through the clarifying, powerful lens of ancient Stoic wisdom. We will expose these patterns for what they are, because as the great Stoic emperor Marcus Aurelius once said, if someone can control your mind, they already own your life. So, in this video, we're not hunting monsters. We are uncovering 5 very real world, often quiet, signs that someone in your life might be slowly, subtly destroying you from the inside out. And once you truly learn to see them, you will never be able to unsee them again. Sign number 1, the slow erosion of constant criticism. It almost never begins with a shout. It begins with a sigh, a disappointed look, a seemingly harmless comment. Why do you always do it that way? You really think that's a good idea? One small comment here, another tomorrow, then another the next week, until one day, you find yourself unconsciously second-guessing your own voice. You pause before you speak, not because you're unsure, but because someone has slowly told you that you are always slightly wrong. That is not feedback, that is erosion. There is a profound difference between guidance and control. Constructive feedback is focused, kind, and rooted in a desire to build you up. But constant criticism is often vague, repetitive, and targeted at who you are, not just at something you did. You can feel it in your gut. It doesn't sharpen you, it shrinks you. In families, it often comes wrapped in comparison. Your cousin already bought a house. In relationships, it comes wrapped in sarcasm. Relax. I'm just being honest. And here's the insidious trap. The more familiar it becomes, the more you normalize it. You stop noticing the ache and you start editing yourself just to survive. But Stoicism teaches us a vital truth. What you allow, you teach. And if you allow someone to erode your worth in small doses, you are silently handing them permission to continue. The great Stoic Epictetus once said, "No one can harm you without your consent." Criticism that consistently targets your dignity is not a teaching tool. It is a form of subtle domination. So how do you respond? You start by recognizing the feeling it produces, that tension in your chest, that fatigue after a simple conversation. These are not overreactions. They are warning signs from your soul. You don't need to scream. You simply need to draw a line with calm, clarity, and conviction, because the longer you tolerate constant criticism, the more you lose access to your own inner voice. And if you lose that, you lose the very compass that guides your life. Do not confuse endurance with wisdom or politeness with peace. Sometimes healing begins with a sentence as simple as, "That felt like criticism, not care." Say it once, then step back and watch who chooses to meet you with respect, and who only knew how to engage through control. Sign number 2, the insidious invasion of boundary violations. It always seems to start small, doesn't it? A late night call you didn't ask for, an uninvited opinion about your life, someone borrowing your time or energy without ever asking first. You brush it off, telling yourself it's not a big deal. But deep down, something feels off. Something inside you whispers, "This isn't okay." You often silence that voice because it's a parent, a sibling, someone who says they love you. But here's a fundamental truth. Love without respect is just a form of possession. And if someone consistently refuses to honor your stated boundaries, they're not truly loving you in a healthy way. They are managing you. I once knew a man whose mother showed up at his home unannounced every week. She had a key. She'd walk in, rearrange things, comment on his groceries. When he finally asked her to please call before visiting, she laughed and said, "I'm your mother. I don't need permission." That sentence stayed with him for years. Not because it was loud, but because it was so profoundly revealing. It told him everything about how she saw him, as an extension of herself, not as a separate, sovereign human being. This is what boundary violations often looks like. Subtle patterns that constantly say, "What matters to you doesn't matter to me." And the longer you allow it, the more you can forget that your time, space, and emotional energy belong, first and foremost, to you. Now, some people cross boundaries because they were never taught what they are. But others, they know exactly what they're doing. They don't burst through your limits, they strategically test them. They lean in just enough, apologize just enough, and twist your empathy into guilt until you become a yes machine. And when you finally say no, they act wounded and say, "Wow, you've really changed." But what they often really mean is, "You've stopped letting me control you." Stoicism teaches us that setting boundaries is not about aggressively pushing people away. It's about lovingly protecting what's worth keeping close, your peace, your focus, your very soul. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." I'd argue it also becomes colored by the people we allow unfiltered access to our lives. So, how do you respond? You start by shifting the energy. When someone crosses a line, you don't need to explain your worth. You simply need to clarify your standard. You say, "Please don't come over without calling first." Or, "I'm not comfortable with that topic." Simple, direct, with no apologies needed. And then comes the most important part. You must follow through. Because boundaries without consequences are merely suggestions. If someone continues to cross that line after you've made it clear, you don't owe them more warnings. You owe yourself decisive action. You limit the time you spend with them. You shift the dynamic. Or, if necessary, you have the courage to walk away entirely. Stoic strength isn't about building walls. It's about drawing lines with quiet conviction and having the unwavering discipline to stand by them. Sign number 3, the war on your sanity, also known as gaslighting. Some wounds don't bleed or bruise. They don't leave marks that others can see. But they're there. You feel them in the subtle way you've started to question your own memory, in the way you second-guess your own emotions, in the way you begin a sentence with, "Well, maybe I'm just being too sensitive," even though, deep down, you know you're not. That is the insidious power of gaslighting, and it is one of the most dangerous forms of psychological manipulation because it doesn't destroy you from the outside in. It meticulously dismantles you from the inside out. It usually starts with small contradictions. "I never said that." "You're just imagining things." "Don't be so dramatic." You walk away from these conversations feeling dizzy and off-kilter, like you just lost an argument you didn't even know you were in. Over time, you begin to question your own reality. You ask yourself, was I really wrong? Maybe I am too emotional. Maybe I am the problem here. No, you're not. You are being played. Gaslighting is not a simple misunderstanding. It is a deliberate strategy for control. The person using it doesn't want healthy communication, they want dominance. They win when you start keeping score with yourself instead of with their behavior. They win when your own truth becomes negotiable. But here's the fundamental Stoic truth you must hold onto like a lifeline. Your mind is your fortress. And no one, no matter how charming or close they may be, has the right to occupy it without your explicit permission. Epictetus once said, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. Now, that doesn't mean the abuse is your fault. Not at all. It means your power to reclaim your sanity begins the very moment you stop letting them define the terms of your reality. So, what can you do? You stop debating. Gaslighters aren't interested in objective truth. They're interested in winning. Instead of getting drawn into another circular, confusing argument, calmly detach and simply observe. Start writing things down. Keep a private log. Track their words and your reactions. Not for revenge, but for your own clarity. Talk to someone completely outside the dynamic. Someone you trust, who will act as an anchor to reality and say, no, you're not crazy. That actually happened. That single moment of validation is often when true healing can finally begin. And finally, you must set a firm line. Not a threat, not a dramatic speech, but a clear boundary with a definite consequence. If the pattern of gaslighting repeats, you don't need to scream or argue. You just need to calmly, decisively step back, detach, and reclaim your mind, because gaslighting doesn't steal your power all at once. It takes it slowly, insidiously, until one day you look in the mirror and you stop recognizing yourself. But today, you see it, you feel it, and from this moment forward, you can make the conscious choice to refuse to betray your own mind just to keep someone else comfortable in their deception. This isn't weakness, this is profound, courageous wisdom, and the moment you choose to trust yourself again, you become someone no manipulator can ever truly touch. Sign number 4. The slow poison of chronic dishonesty. There's a moment in these kinds of dynamics, and you will never forget it, when someone you trust looks you directly in the eye and lies to you. Not a mistake, not a white lie, but a deliberate, calculated distortion of a truth you both know. And in that moment, something inside you breaks, not loudly, but with a quiet, devastating crack. It's the breaking of your trust, not just in them, but momentarily, in your own judgment. Dishonesty in a close relationship rarely shows up as one giant betrayal. It's more clever. It comes in quiet drops, a skips detail, a story that changes slightly, a promise they forgot. At first, you give them the benefit of the doubt, but then you start collecting these red flags like painful souvenirs, until you realize you've been building a relationship on shifting sand. And this is where Stoicism draws a firm line. Seneca once wrote, "Truth is the first lesson of friendship, because without truth, there is no real relationship. There's only performance, only illusion." People often say they lie to protect your feelings, but what they're really protecting is their own convenience. They lie because the truth would cost them effort or accountability. There's omission, what they don't say. Minimization, it's not a big deal, and deflection, why are you so paranoid? All of it has the same corrosive effect. You begin to lose your footing and stop trusting your own judgment. What does a Stoic do? First, you stop listening only to their words. You start watching their behavior. People lie with words, but truth leaks through actions. Second, you must stop trying to fix them. Their dishonesty is not your burden to carry. You don't need another talk. You need to make a decision. And third, you reclaim your clarity. You write down the contradictions. You re-anchor to your own truth. And you let the silence between you grow, not out of anger, but out of profound respect for your own peace. When someone repeatedly lies to you, they are telling you, without words, that your trust is disposable. Your response must be final, not anymore. Sign number 5, the hidden blade of disrespect disguised as humor. It often starts with a smile, a laugh, a kidding tone. Maybe you laugh along at first, not wanting to seem like you can't take a joke, but something tightens in your chest. Something deep inside you says, that wasn't funny, that was aimed, and it was. Disrespect disguised as humor is one of the most socially accepted forms of emotional abuse. It slips under the radar. It doesn't shout, it snickers. It skillfully hides its sharp blade behind a witty punchline, and if you dare to flinch, they immediately turn it on you. Wow, you're just so sensitive. Sound familiar? You are not overreacting. You are being baited into accepting disrespect. I remember a woman who once said, "It wasn't the final insult that finally broke me. It was realizing I had spent 20 years laughing at my own humiliation just to keep the peace." Let that sink in. People who hide cruelty behind jokes often know exactly what they're doing. They study your insecurities and shape their humor to target them. But if the joke only lands one way, if the only one laughing is the one holding the knife, is that really humor? No, that's domination in disguise. The Stoics had a very different idea of how words should be used. Marcus Aurelius said words should be like a physician's knife, used to heal, not to wound. So-called brutal honesty is often a mask for emotional laziness. Real honesty is courageous but also kind. So how do you respond? You stop laughing. You stop validating cruelty with your polite silence. You don't need to argue. You can simply, calmly say, "That felt disrespectful to me," and then let the uncomfortable silence land where it belongs, with them. Because here's the Stoic truth: you do not owe anyone your tolerance for disrespect. Even if they're family, and perhaps especially if they're family. If someone consistently hides poison in their punchlines, you don't have to sip it just to keep the peace. You are not the difficult one. You are the one who has finally had enough. And that is not weakness, that is profound strength. Beautifully disguised as dignity, you've just walked through 5 common behaviors that can quietly dismantle your spirit. Constant criticism, boundary violations, gaslighting, chronic dishonesty, and disrespect disguised as jokes. None of them might leave visible bruises, but all of them, without a doubt, leave deep, lasting damage. And the most dangerous part, they often come from the very people we're taught to trust the most. A partner who says they love you but erodes your self-worth. A family member who weaponizes guilt and calls it care. A friend who uses your silence as permission to keep crossing the line. But here's the fundamental truth you must now embrace: what you tolerate, you teach. And every time you say nothing, every time you choose a false peace over your own authentic voice, you're teaching them that your boundaries are merely optional. But not anymore, because now you know better. Stoicism isn't about being cold or passive. It's not about just swallowing pain or pretending nothing affects you. It's about clarity. It's about agency. It's about wisely, courageously knowing where your own peace ends and someone else's chaos begins. Marcus Aurelius didn't teach us to endure everything blindly. He taught us to see things as they truly are, and then to act accordingly, with virtue and reason. That means you get to choose who has access to your precious energy. You get to choose who gets a seat at your table, and you get to decide who no longer qualifies to speak into your life. You do not need anyone's permission to protect your peace. You only need your own courage. So, here's your next step. Start with one line, one boundary, one truth that you've been holding back. Maybe it's finally, calmly saying, "I don't find that funny," or "That's not okay with me anymore." Maybe it's deciding that your silence is no longer the path to mere survival, but is now the powerful sound of your self-respect returning. Whatever it is, let it be real, because when you stop tolerating what hurts you, you simultaneously start building a life that truly honors you. And in that sacred space you create for yourself, you don't just survive, you rise. If this video resonated with you, I invite you to leave a comment and share your story. Someone out there needs to know they're not the only one. Like this video if you felt seen today. And please subscribe to Think Stoic 101 for more insights that protect your peace, sharpen your mind, and strengthen your spirit. Remember this powerful truth. This isn't about becoming harder or colder. It's about becoming wiser, because you were never meant to be everyone's emotional punching bag. You were meant to stand tall, to speak your truth, and to draw the line with love, with calm, and with unshakable power.